physical movement, and especially movement once I'm already kind of in an altered state, like a trance state.
Mm-hmm.
Physical movement there is the juice that keeps me, I think keeps me alive.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 54. Heathen Wildflower.
Body talker.
Artist.
Yogini.
Shaman.
Ecstatic mover.
Healer.
Nomad.
Ancestor lover.
Witch.
Whoa.
And so much more.
And so much more. We're talking about Falki, who we're interviewing today.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 54, our interview with Falki. I have been wanting to have Falki talk with us for ages, for a number of different reasons. I know Leilani would like to maybe talk a little bit about some of her reasons, but I love to learn from people, and I learned so much from you. Well, first of all, Falki, say something.
Hi, I'm Falki. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm grateful you're here with us too.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I learned so much about you in terms of art, in terms of embodiment, in terms of creative expression. And so I'm eager to delve into those topics, maybe, depending on if you want to, and hopefully not fangirl too much.
Ooh, fangirl.
I'm also grateful to have you here today. And I was wondering if we could start off with having you share a little bit about yourself and how you describe yourself and how you identify as a human, as a spiritual person walking through this world.
Oh.
No pressure, no pressure.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
Stage. No.
Okay.
That's such how I identify is an interesting question. Because for a long time, a long time, not so much now, but maybe because it's causing me problems. I was just talking about this. So here's the thing. I used to look at myself in the mirror, and I would look at my eyes from as far back as I can remember to make sure that I was even alive, like to make sure that I existed. I did not have a solid identity for a long time. And if you want to look at a DSM-5, you will find that as a disorder somewhere, but we don't need to talk about that. But it's true. I would, and I still have this weird habit of looking in a mirror and not looking to but I look and I check and then I realize what I'm doing. And I have a lot of thought about that. So it's interesting, this identity question, because I do finally identify as being someone who exists and who exists on her own, like without needing someone to look at me and without needing to look to make sure I'm there. I know that I exist. And as far as how I identify, I identify as a cis female who is suppose sexually fluid would be the closest to that one, who's currently in a relationship with a heterosexual male. So there's that piece. I identify as, I was thinking about this one last night. Do I identify as a witch? Do I identify as a shaman? Do I identify? And I think the closest thing spiritually for me is witch. I consider myself a heathen wildflower. I'm a little too loose to be among a crowd of heathens without feeling like it's not quite right. But I am deeply, deeply, deeply sunk and rooted in the beliefs, the myths, the cosmological, ontological of my Norse ancestors. I am an ancestor lover, and I do practice some shamanic things. I am an ecstatic. I forget that nobody's going to see me, so
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Like, we needed to videotape this.
Y'all know I talk with my body. I'm a body talker, so this is a little hard, but ecstasy, energy, trance, journeying, all of that stuff is very, very important to me. And I guess in the Norse world, I would probably be leaning toward what is called a vulva, which is the Norse witch.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for, I was going to ask you to explain heathenry, but I think people, because we haven't talked about that much in our podcast, but I think people might have gotten it by the time you moved on to your Norse ancestry. But is there anything else you'd like to say about heathenry for noobs?
Again, just acknowledging that this is my understanding.
Sure.
Right. So heathenry is it's so confusing. So some people would say, oh, heathenry is Norse paganism. Heathenry is neo-paganism from the North. Heathenry is. The way I speak about heathenry, I'm talking about heathenry as a Reconstructionist religion based on the traditions of pre-Christian old Germanic tribes. And it encompasses really quite a big area. So Northern Germanic includes Scandinavia, includes Germany, and it also includes Anglo-Saxon England. And there are all kinds of, just like there is in Christianity, there are all kinds of groups within that. And I can't tell you all their names because some of them I can't even pronounce. But they're really, again, what I'm talking about with heathenry is these folks try really hard to reconstruct the traditions that were going on. This is not typically a place of, ooh, let's pull in, we don't just, because we feel like it, have a ritual to Diana, because she's not part of it, unless we're Greek Reconstructionists. So I don't really fit there because I'm just a little too loose. Too eclectic. Although in my personal practice, I really tend there. I just feel like I need a little bit more space. And it saying that I don't fit, because I have said that before and may have said it even a couple sentences ago, is my perception. It might not be other heathens' perceptions.
Right.
And then the last thing, the tradition that I align the most within heathenry is ancestor, which is the Old Norse, and specifically looking at, I typically go toward Iceland to look for my stuff. And I think it's important to know that ancestor, it is an officially recognized religion in Iceland.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And they actually have, I'm not sure where they are in the building. I don't know if it's been opened yet, but they do they have, they started building, I think in maybe 2017, maybe a little earlier, a temple to the gods in Iceland.
Oh, I think I remember either you or someone else telling me about this because I
Hmm.
remember just thinking how fascinating that was
Hmm.
and exciting and and scary. I mean,
It's it is super cool, and they they invite visitors. I'm pretty sure they have some closed rituals, but their seasonal celebrations are open. They perform a lot of gay weddings.
wow,
Up
that's
there, yeah, yeah. They I saw an article that their group published, and so it's super cool to think of this pre-Christian religion being truly officially recognized as a
totally.
religion in Iceland, right next to Lutheranism.
So okay, so I have a question I'd like to ask. I when I think of and again, I've just been kind of painting everything with a really, really broad brush and just making it all one thing, like Christianity is all one thing, right? And
Hmm.
so I think of Odin and Freya and Frigga. Are there common deities among all of these different maybe denominations, or are the actual deities different, or maybe shared archetypes or something like that? Do you, if as far as you know?
So my understanding,
Of
right,
course,
is
of
that
course.
there are folks within heathenry who are very folkish or tribal, and they may stick specifically to deity figures that were from that region. So, for instance, Skadi, who is very Scandinavian, maybe somebody who is from I'm going to call it a sect, and you can please put little quotes around that for my fingers. Um, a group down in closer toward northern Germany may never recognize Skadi. Freya, Thor, and Odin are typically very Norse, or northern Scandinavia. But Odin is Woden, who is a southern deity. So, but you might have a heathen who says, okay, all of the northern Germanic deities are open for me
Mhm.
because I'm a non-denominational heathen, right? This is not my situation, but
Okay.
I'm non-denom, so
Hmm.
they're all there. But then you might have there's a group, I can't remember their name, but they are specifically Pennsylvania Dutch, and they have very specific deity that they work with. I feel I'm a little bit of I'm definitely not fluffy bunny. I'm definitely dark edge walker, but still, yeah, I'm a little woo.
She's
Yeah,
making fairy for our listeners. She's making fairy motions with her
little,
hands, or butterfly, whichever.
whatever it is. Uh,
Thank you. I didn't
mhm.
realize how difficult like I said, one of the things I love in conversation with you is how your energy comes out so much in terms of your body, your hands, your shoulders, your where you're
Yeah.
leaning, things like that. And so I didn't realize how difficult a podcast was going to be for you when we suggested this.
Hmm. Hmm. This
But
is
thank you
harder.
so much for
You're welcome. I've only done one other podcast. Well, I guess no, two, but I was on the phone,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, this will be easier than that, but it's not
Yeah. Well, I
because
think, yeah, because you see us, so you want to do what you do when we're normally in the same room together, right? Yeah.
hmm
Hmm.
You
hmm
mentioned ecstasy, energy, trance, and journeying. And as I was listening to you, I was like, that sounds like a good Friday night for me.
hmm
Oh yeah. Yeah,
hmm
totally. Totally. So,
dance,
yeah.
sweat, drop into ecstasy, trance.
Yeah.
What else is there?
I
So
know. I know.
I love for that, for those reasons, for a lot of reasons, those included. I love being in circle with you. It's so
Mhm.
wonderful because I get to be I try to be across from you, so
Mm.
I can like both connect with you energetically and like bounce off of you, and it feels so good.
Very much. Very much. So, would you care to speak a little bit more about your practice? Because you just threw a whole bunch of stuff at us, and I know, we have done so many rituals where you've brought a lot of your, I think what I would consider your personal practice to the circle.
Another hard question, really. I mean, hard
That's
just
that's
because
us. We do the hard questions.
I have a hard time speaking. My practice changed, like, I don't have, I'm not one of those good get up at 5 a.m. and do the things and then the thing and then the other thing. It just doesn't happen. But so my practice is almost every single thing that I do is part of it, because it just doesn't, for a long time, I thought I had to keep everything separate. Like I had my witch ball and then I had my regular ball, and my regular ball included all of the other things like painting and dancing and moving and all of that. And then somewhere along the line, I realized this does not work for me at all. And things have to be together. They just have to. And so when I paint, I'm like, right now I'm somehow obsessed with tadpole shapes. And I'm like realizing that I'm also, I'm working this immersion about shedding skins. And so I'm thinking about tadpoles and reptiles, and they're coming out as little yellow tadpole fishy things on paper. And that's part of my practice. And shaking is a part of my practice. And, it depends on what is moving in me in that moment, whether it moves onto a piece of paper in paint, or it drives me toward a journey, or things like that. But I would say grounding pieces of my, like, really not sitting here drinking tea stuff is, I do a pretty fair amount of trance journeying. I talk to my guides a lot. I spin runes. I mean, there's one that I latched onto it. I journey. Like, oh my gosh, this is hard. It's hard to nail down. Like everything is, and then there are these other things that are like, most people probably don't do them on a daily basis, right? So there's this stuff like dancing and moving and that is the practice, and painting and making sure that I create every day. That is the practice. I do meditate. I practice mindfulness. I was kind of raised in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition there, so I work that. And then there's the like leaning woo, where I sing runes and I throw runes and I vision runes, and I travel to the underworld and various other places to meet interesting people.
I was going to say, each one of those is an episode. I mean, you say that just like you just toss it off, and then, there's so much I want to say, I want to ask, I want to talk about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel, I know you said that you kind of compartmentalized it for a while. Do you feel now that you've really managed to integrate those aspects, those various tons of really interesting facets of your life?
I do. Yeah. So when the COVID pandemic happened, I had already been leaning toward something needs to shift. I want to work differently. And so COVID happened around my 50th birthday. I was in Iceland when the first, we started hearing things in the airport.
Right.
You know, and I had also at that time finally decided to do a shamanic internship with a woman who considers herself a Norse shaman. So we were spinning runes, we were talking about shamanism, we were talking about dying, and all of this stuff is happening at the same time. I had a huge shift in archetypal energy. I had been following the archetype of the warrior queen. This is going to sound so bizarre. I'm so glad that your podcast is called Witchy Wit, because I'm like, this kind of talking I don't do with everybody, even though it is all the way in there. So I spent my 40s with the warrior queen. And when I turned 50, I thought it felt like there was a shift happening. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being this shaman healer artist thing that bubbled up. So anyway, I got into this and decided I need a website, and that website is going to be the integration of me. Mm-hmm. It is where I do most of my coaching work, which is actually deeper. It's not like, let me help you reach a goal. It's more psychospiritual stuff that has leaned toward, there was a lot of breath work in the beginning. Now it's actually started leaning into goddess archetypal work. The upcoming is mostly around grief and transformation for a year. So Falcon and Acorn, the website, is all of me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Every single thing that I am is on that website. And so anybody who works with me now, since 2020, is working with me as that whole person. And even more so now that we're on the road, because I am no longer, I don't practice as an LPC in Texas anymore, because it's unethical to do so, and I'm not getting in trouble. I was also burned out and done with part of that. And so now it's really all this, all this.
Would you care to talk a little bit about what you mean when you say now that you're on the road?
Yes, sure. So I'm technically I'm not on the road right now. I'm in Maine, but I'm not a resident of Maine. Mm-hmm. So on May 28th, my partner and I moved into a 12-foot pop-up triangular trailer with our 2 cats, and moved out of our little witch cottage in San Antonio and hit the road. And we lived in that camper until November 12th. Mm-hmm. And we have traveled, we left Texas and traveled north to Montana, and then across the top and down a little bit and all over the place, just to do it. And and then we somewhere in there decided, typical wintering when you live in a camper is Arizona, Florida, Texas. Mm-hmm. I was like, the options in Arizona didn't look fun. They didn't. Mm-hmm. Florida is a no-go for me. I'm just not going to do it. I went to boot camp there. I'm not going to go back. I don't need to. Texas. So it was like, okay, well, we could look at coastal Texas, I guess. And I was just like this. I mean, nobody can see me, but I'm like, my shoulders are dropped down. My head is dropped down. I feel like a turtle with its neck too far out, and it's gross. I don't want to. And so we happened to be in Minnesota at that time. And she was like, well, what do you think about like wintering in coastal Maine? Well, I've been reading Stephen King since I was 11. So if you want to get me somewhere, you rang all my bells. We didn't get coastal Maine. We didn't.
Yeah.
But we're improvisers, and our improvising friends had family who had blah, 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 who stayed here. And so we ended up in a house in Maine for the dead of winter. So I am a nomad.
Yeah. I was going to say, and you can make those decisions because you were like a turtle, right? You carried everything, well, not on your back, but on you pulled it after behind your car.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And that was really, I will tell you, so that actually could be an interesting little conversation, coming back to the idea of identity and do I exist and all of that. So I describe myself sometimes as being at like my base. I am like dry leaves that are blowing in the wind. And my job in my life is to find a way to keep those leaves from falling apart. And so that's a lot of that identity. Like, who am I? How do I anchor? And when we got on the road, I wanted to be on the road. This has been a dream of mine since like 2017. But we got on the road, and about 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks in, I started not really doing great. Like, I'm okay, but I feel I'm unsettled. I'm eating weird. Things are not, and so I was like, what do I do? What do I have to do? And I did a journey. I went on a journey. I decided that's all I've got. I'm going to anchor there. And I went on a journey, and some of my European ancestors were nomadic. And of course, the Vikings, many of them, they moved around a lot. And so I can't really tell you who I encountered exactly, but they sat me down and they said, the sun looks different wherever you go, but the sun is never different. And the earth looks different wherever you go, but the earth is not different. So you don't have to ground into a locality. You don't have to drop, you can drop your roots in the earth and be grounded wherever you are. And it was a big deal for me, because I felt like I was getting undone a little bit. And so to find, like, I am a nomad, but I am an earthling. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I am an earthling, and the earth is where I can plant. And so that was important. And so I try to bring that into any of my meditations and droppings. It's like, okay, I am where I am.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask one more question. I know Leilani has some questions too, but I just want to follow up before we go into a different direction. So in terms of this nomadicism, becoming a nomad, okay, let me take in terms of your identity, what were some of the things that you were confronted with when you went from a home, a stable place where you could have all the things, to I can't remember what the size of your trailer was, but to that trailer, and knowing that you had to figure out how to get all of the important things into that trailer and then carry it around with you, if you care to share.
I don't really know how to answer that question. Mm-hmm. It wasn't hard. That part wasn't hard for me. I'm very nostalgic in a way, but then I'm also not. Like, material to me is pretty easy to release. Mm-hmm. So that part, I had things I knew I would take. I have my medicine bag. I have my runes. I have a picture of my girls, Ginger and Sophie, and they travel with me everywhere. I also have their ashes. And those, for everyone who doesn't know, are my dogs. So I knew they were coming. And beyond that, I made sure that some of the important things which were few, were placed with people who love me, who I love.
I got some of those.
You did. Leilani did. So they're safe. I feel like the things that need love are where they need to be. So my identity is not in things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you said spoke to something that I've experienced as somebody who I think for myself, I'm not super into a lot of things. Like I like personally, I like living with less stuff. And I like to do as opposed to like have, and like not in a judgmental way of other people who like to have a lot of things around them. I'm not speaking from a place of like one being better than the other, just different ways of existing. And with that in mind, I found it interesting that whenever I've traveled for longer periods of time, like months and months, or been away for months and months, I found it interesting to have these like really somewhat simple, but also really profound thoughts of like, oh, people live here like this. And it's like a simple aha, but it's also a pretty profound aha, which is like the life that I live here, I could live another life somewhere else and still be me, but it would be different because I would be there, but it would be the same, but it would be different. And also people are doing this thing while I do my thing over here. Like, it's just this weird and simple realization.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I see you, and I see you living this nomadic life and wintering in Maine. And I don't know if you were bumping up against something whenever you were experienced like 6 to 8 weeks or whatever in, and as you were like unfolding into this lifestyle. But I find it really inspiring that you are continuing to push through that resistance. I don't know what to call it specifically because it's not mine. And still seeking that rooting down.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it resistance either. One of my worlds over here, I've practiced yoga since, I don't know, 90s, 95, 96, something, a long time. And so and from an Ayurvedic perspective, I am a Vata. I am dry. I'm Vata Pitta, so I'm dry and hot in a lot of ways. And especially right now, I'm hot flashes all the time, but that's another story altogether, and something else that is very spiritual to me when I'm not moaning about it. But for Vata people, and especially if your Vata has kind of gone over, right? Structure is really important. And I am notoriously not a well-structured person. So being in a house and as y'all know, I lived in the same house for several years. It was a house with a land person that I knew very well. There was a lot of, in that house, and that so not having a structure wasn't that big a deal. Mm-hmm. Hit the road, we're moving every day, or maybe toward the beginning we were lengthening out a little bit, but still it was like, we're on the road, we're not sitting still, we're not eating in the same place, we're not eating well. That's when it got. And so on the road, figuring out what was my structure, even if it was loose, like, oh yes, we do have coffee before I actually do anything at all. Here's this. That was more important than having things. And just, it was like a little balm. Once I became mindful, oh, this is happening. It was like, oh, I have a balm. Now I can keep going. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know if that was even close to anything you said, Leilani, but
was... I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I think I'm taking a slight left turn, but you were talking about doing yoga since the 90s, and Leilani, you mentioned earlier how she enjoys viewing your the way you express yourself physically, and maybe I don't know how you'd feel about maybe sharing the ways in which your movement and your body might reflect or be a part of your practice. I'm doing quotes for people at home. Your practice.
Um, yes. So can I give you a little history about that? Is that okay?
Please,
Okay.
Please.
please.
Because it's the whole reason
Yeah.
really that I think I am who I am. So my history with my body is bad. It's not a good history. I
Bad
have
history.
long history of eating disorder, body hate, a little bit of self-harming beyond that, and also like just not happy here. Like I don't belong here. I remember having a memory one time, and I was not well. I was not a healthy person at the time, but I remember walking down the hall one time and thinking and sincerely seeing myself see through my eyes, going, I do not belong in this. Whatever this is, let me out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there was a lot of things with that, but so my history with this thing was not good. And then I found yoga. And I found yoga for all the wrong reasons. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to look like the front of Yoga Journal. All the right.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I had also found Buddhism at the same time, and paganism. So I had this triad of stuff going on. And so I was meditating. I was reading a lot of primarily Thich Nhat Hanh and some other more Japanese leaning Zen. So a lot of things were going on, but I found yoga. And I remember the day that I flipped a cartwheel in my backyard for the first time since I had been like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the most joyful experience I think I had had in this human body since well before my teens. And that's what physical movement is to me. So it is always that, no matter what. Like if I'm having a crappy, painful day, physical movement is still the reminder of that.
Mm-hmm.
As it grew and then the next thing that happens, practiced yoga, teach yoga, practiced yoga, still feeling something. And I can't really tell you exactly what, but like, I'm not all the way there. I'm still scared of my body. And that's where hooping came in. And I walked into a hoop class and I said, you will not be able to teach me this. I'm terrified of doing this. I cannot do it. I've never been able to do it. And she said, you will do it. By the end of this class, you will have that hoop up. And I did. And it was, as you all know, because you were there in that part of my life, mind blowing and body blowing. And it changed everything. It opened me up to being seen in physical movement. It moved me away from fear. So I started dancing again. I started exploring somatic healing. I started doing improv and contact improv, which reconnected me to this body as a body that likes to be with other bodies. I like to be with other bodies a lot. I would like to rub up against a lot of bodies, but only the bodies that I like. But I like to be in physical connection. And contact improv moved me past like weight shame, bone shame. Like I can go either way. I'm too heavy or I'm too bony. Like my mind will go either way. And contact improv shifted that, hit me with oxytocin. I can trance in motion better than I can trance still. Mm-hmm. I can trance in my elbow. It's just so physical movement, especially improvised physical movement, and especially movement once I'm already kind of in an altered state, by not using chemicals, but trance, like a trance state.
Mm-hmm.
Physical movement there is the juice that keeps me, I think keeps me alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I one of the things I learned is not from something you specifically teach as a lesson, but just observing you doing you. and me and I expand by saying, I want a little of that now. How do I get that? Being me, not her. And so I so appreciate your sharing that with us, because it kind of highlights some of the aspects that to me it's something that comes from maybe a period, maybe some dark or pain, but it makes you so fucking shiny, like really really shiny and so attractive. So thank you. Attractive in a, well, I guess attractive is always a good way, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah.
And I'm down for it. I like to be attractive.
It's all that bodies. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I like to share that you and I would go hooping together, and it's so important to me, those moments that I had in space with you while we hooped, and hooping and dancing and moving and playing and crying and all of those things that were physically going on with me, at the same time. So I had like a physical experience. I'm moving my body, like I can feel my joints moving, and I can feel oftentimes my feet on the earth or my feet on the studio floor, and I'm gripping with my toes, and I'm rolling, and I'm stretching, and my elbows are bumping into things, and it felt so good physically. Or maybe it didn't feel good, but I was feeling things,
Yeah.
which ultimately is good. But like, I'm feeling things in my body. And then for me, that physical layer is going on, but there's this whole other party going on at the same time, spiritually. And, I'm connecting, and psychologically, I'm processing, and I'm spiritually like, extending out and extending down, and things are moving and shifting and coalescing and breaking apart, all at the same time while I'm physically doing this. And it is so empowering to, in some way, witness someone else who is having a similar but different journey, in and around their body. And for me, it's really liberating, to have that sort of reflected back to me, in your own way. And it really helps to validate. I felt unique in a way that sometimes was lonely. And it's nice to find a witch who, I can't remember, did you say you identified as a witch?
Sure.
Oh yeah. A witchy person, who experiences their body connected to their spirituality in a way that I see echo mine.
And that the body, the mind, the spirit, but that energy. So just for our listeners' perspective, in case you haven't figured this out, we're doing this on Zoom, and so I get waves of your energy just because I don't know if it's actually coming through Zoom, but because I've been in the room when you've done something similar, and so I can kind of tap into the energy I felt then, and it's on a certain level, and I don't know how to put this. I'm just going to say it, and then if we need to clean it up, we will. On a certain level, it's overwhelming, for me, because it's so present, and that's not something we're encouraged to be in this culture, right? To be really, really present. And so that's one of yet another thing that I learned from you, that I haven't learned it yet, because if I learned it, I'd be doing it too. But that I see and I love and I want some of. So I'm going to ask you this because you are doing, and not to tell you how to interview.
No,
or anything.
please do.
Yeah, as we say in Jersey, not for nothing, but you throw these little teasing hints out about all the different things that you do. And so for example, you mentioned your art or your, and I, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that because, and particularly the ways in which it reflects or influences your spirituality. Because I'm just going to throw out one thing and then turn this over to you. I just remember you blew my freaking head off when at a retreat a few years ago, where you showed us how we can take our journals and we could actually write over what we wrote in our journals and paint and I'm speechless. But I can't tell you how that totally changed my interaction with my journaling, the process, and what I thought was going on when you taught me that. I mean, just the different ways, the layers, literally layers of interacting with things that you said in the past, and then adding stuff that, oh my gosh. So anyway, so having said that, would you care to share a little bit more about your many endeavors?
Sure. So art is I think my other big, so there's the body, and then there's this thing that is art, that it's another space that, I never self-harmed my art. I never did that. But I didn't feel safe saying that I liked art or was an artist until very recently, and have had to do some timeline stuff around that because I've been creating jewelry and stuff like that since the 90s. The 90s were both my break apart and my opening, my Saturn return. Anyway, but I became the fabulous person that I am today. Anyway, so art is another like life-saving tool. It started as a life-saving tool. Even back in the jewelry stage, I was not well, not at all. And just beading, like just putting a bead on a string was kind of the coping. That was the one thing I had in my toolkit that I was certain of for a long time. And then I went through this place when I first got to Texas, and I met y'all, and I was like, whoa, what's happening to my sexuality right now? And you can't see me, folks, but I was freaking out. So that's happening. And I'm going to like Festival of the Goddess, and I'm with you all the time, and things and energy. And I'm having, here, I'll throw another one. I have it in a journey where I let Kali eat my head. All this stuff is happening, and I'm painting, but I'm not acknowledging that I'm painting. I'm painting all the time. I have canvases, well, not anymore because I gave them away, the canvases of goddesses all over the place, all the time, but I'm not talking about it. And I was in a really pretty like confused, but really good kind of place. And it took another like dive into this terrible anxiety, weird things happening to me. And I found Zentangling.
I remember.
And I just loved it because, and the thing about Zentangling, when I was, right, there's some beautiful art out there, beautiful, colorful, beautiful. But Zentangling for me was a single pen and a tiny white piece of paper. It was very much like Japanese Zen Buddhism. Let's put a container around this fat, crazy thing that is happening. And it just zoomed me in, and it's all I wanted to do. And Zentangling took me to other kinds of drawing. And then finally, just a couple of years ago, watercolor, what? So that, and it's just So art to me is like, it's magic all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is a healing magic. And so when I engage in it, and now there's comics, and I'm obsessed and I suck at it. I'm so bad, but I love it. But it's like this healing balm thing. So every time I do it, it's magic. And then there's the extra stuff. Like I go through these, I love birds. I love painting birds. And I never really like birds out there. We're like, okay, I mean, falcons, yes, okay. But birds out there, like, they're birds. Yes, I'm an air sign, whatever. I'm an Aquarian. Okay, fine. Birds. But I started painting them and they started showing up in my journeys. And I started seeing them. And when we hit the road, I became bird obsessed. Just like until we're here and you can't see them because there are too many trees. But it's like the art is the magic, and then the art takes me into places that are weird and magical. And I also feel like, and this is something with the art journaling you were talking about, Kimberlyn, it's called, what I learned it as, it's called raw. And the teacher is Amanda Grace. She's no longer doing that workshop, but that's where I got that from. And what I have discovered is that my writing, when I write, I'm so much still up here. I think in
your head.
Yeah, in my head and with my critic. Like my judge is up there going, you should cross that word out and try again, really. And just even like, that writing doesn't look very artistic. You should really revamp. Weird. And some of it is rational and I get some good words sometimes, but when I flip it and start covering it, there's something like it's like something's talking to me, but I can't actually hear the words in a language I can hear, but it's there. Like I know what it is, even if I can't speak it.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens in art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I often feel like I don't, and this is also when Leilani was talking about, the physical and processing and things are happening, all this. I find that it's true as well with art and with movement, and I can't necessarily speak. Like, don't try to make me tell you in a linear fashion what is going on. But I know, but it's like I used to describe this curtain behind my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Curtain behind my mind knows exactly what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that is art. And art is the one thing. If I do move every day, I may not move a lot and I may not do something fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am a couch potato. That's the other thing to know about me. I'm a really bad couch potato. But I do art every single day. Every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
I'm excited.
I think I know you share your art a lot on social media and also on Patreon. Could you talk a little bit about where people who are curious to find your art could look?
Yes. You can find I still even have a hard time saying you can find my art. You can find what I'm doing on Instagram at Falcon and Acorn. I don't have Patreon anymore. I took Patreon down because I opened something new. I have my own social network.
I think I do remember.
You have an invitation.
I was going to say,
Yes.
And it's in a folder that I'm going to get to, but I will get to it right away. Thank you for I really appreciate your reminding me about that. Yes. Tell us more.
Okay. So Falcon and Acorn, I have a social network on the Mighty Networks called Falcon and Acorn. And it didn't start, I didn't have the original idea to have like a general social network. Basically it's what is that word? there is a gateway, and that gateway to the little network itself is that you've worked with me in some way. Mm-hmm. And so it's free in that way, but it's also vetted, right? Mm-hmm. And then within it, so it started as I wanted to do this thing called Midwifing the Crone. And I wanted that to be a subscription-based social community where I wasn't doing like a lot of heavy lifting, but was doing some of the lifting to encourage older women to come together and talk about how do we want to go and be wise crones. What does that even mean? There's going to be book club. We're reading Haggitude. Oh my gosh. That was what it was. And Mighty Network was like, yeah, you can definitely do a monthly or annual subscription. So there it is. And then it grew into this place that has Midwifing the Crone. It has the social network group for one of my immersions, which is called 13 Moons, A Journey to the Goddess Within. Mm-hmm. And then it's holding space for Shedding Skins, which mm-hmm. is the deep dive with the dark goddesses. That's mostly around grief and stuff. So, and then there's the general Falcon and Acorn network. That's just this little gathering place of the coolest people. I don't know why I was talking about that in the first place, because I lost the thread, but that's what's happening.
We were just asking about getting to you. How would people?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, right. So I got rid of Patreon, and shifted that into the Mighty Network, into a small circle that's called Falcons, Fledglings, and Ayas. And it is a paid subscription where I do quarterly rune readings for people in there. And I also share, right now, I share original digital art in high def PDF that they can do with whatever they want, really, and coloring pages. So that's in there. They can find all of me at falconandacre.com. That's the easiest.
Say that one more time, please.
It's falconandacorn.com.
And or ampersand?
And the word.
Okay, thank you.
I should double check that. Let me pull out my.
And not to worry, we'll put it in the tags too in the show notes. So
okay, good. I don't know. I'll find it.
I'll find it. Don't worry about it.
Falcon and Acorn. Can I, do we have time for me to tell you a little bit about my name? Because
Please.
Okay.
This is your time.
So I do this because there are still people in my world who are confused about who I am and why am I walking around with Falki when my legal name is Tara, and people are like, oh, it's a beautiful name. It is a beautiful name. My given name is Tara Elizabeth. I am named after the word star in Middle Eastern languages and the warrior queen Elizabeth. That is my given name. My parents did a beautiful job. And a few years ago, I was in Journey, and I dropped into a place that is outside the gates of the land of the dead, into the mound of the Volva Heath, which is where my last name, Heath daughter, comes from. And she offered me this name, and I said, is that my name? And she said, it's your name if you step forward and speak it. And so I did that in a circle of women that we're all aware of. And then it was just like, that's actually my name. My given name is also a name, but it's not the name that I am anymore. Wow. So it came to me in Journey. People asked me if it was given to me, and it was given to me. Am I Icelandic? I'm about, and you can look at my little tiny fingers, this much Icelandic. It is an Icelandic name. And I consider Iceland one of my soul homes.
Mm-hmm. And from Falki, which, by the way, every time I tried to text Leilani about this, it would change it to Flake. Just saying.
I'm a little of that as well.
that autocorrect. But and so from Falki, was that how you moved into the falcon and acorn?
So actually, the falcon came first. And this is kind of hazy, but the falcon came first. So I had dedicated to the goddess Freya for a long time, and still have a friendship with her. So lovely, this podcast, because I could say these things. These are also things that most people don't ever hear me say out loud for real. But
Thank you.
so I had dedicated to Freya, and Freya, one of her associations is the falcon cloak, which she also loans to Loki. And so I have and that connection came later. There's so much we could talk about. I can tell you about tricksters and clowning and Loki and all of that in my life as well. But the falcon cloak, I started journeying. I have a falcon guide in this journey. Her name is Red Hazel. And so the falcon was there, the name came, it all kind of, and you can't see my hands, but you see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And there it was.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, because I don't think I ever knew that. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. And do you mind talking just really briefly about tricksters?
No, I don't. It ended up not being, it didn't quite go. So this happens to me a lot too. I have these things that I think are going to be it forever. It's going to be forever. And then they're not. But they're big deals anyways. So I think it started with Loki, who is the trickster god of the Norse pantheon, has been involved in some of my journey work. He shows up periodically. Wow, this is a hard one to talk about because the connections are really weird. The short story of the trickster thing is that I had a migraine, an ocular migraine, and my ocular migraines, often not super painful, but the ocular piece, is usually like the little amoeba shape. So that's my usual. It's an amoeba. I have an ocular migraine. Oh, joy. One particular day, I knew it was coming. I couldn't see right. Things are getting weird. And a thunderbird is what happened. And I was like, and very really, that's a thunderbird shape. That is not an amoeba. My head was like immediate connection, thunderbird. And I started looking that up. I also have some Pueblo ancestry, very small amount, but a little Pueblo ancestry. So that's back there bubbling somewhere. I don't know. But I look up what is the thunderbird. And just one of the little pieces was people who see the thunderbird are called to the sacred work of trickster. And I was like, well, all right. So I got on the computer, and I'd been doing improv now for, a few years, and I had done some clowning that year, and I got on the computer thinking, well, okay, I'll look at some more clown training. And I hit the Los Angeles Clown School. And the first class I saw was Enter the Trickster. And it was just like, well, I have to take that. And it was, and I still believe that there is trickster work for me to do. And that maybe I am doing it. I'm just not, I'm not as like clear on, I do that. I'm like, oh, the concrete in me is like, I want this to be firm and solid, and it never is. It never is.
It's not as maybe blatant. How's that?
Yeah. So my astrology world, I'm an Aquarian, and I have this weird, what is it? How are they divided? Not concrete, that's not right, but there's mutable.
Oh, fixed.
I'm fixed.
What?
I know Aquarius is a fixed sign. And I tell this Kimber, I'm like, I don't get it. I'm supposed to be all free flow. And she's like, you're a fixed sign, baby. You like things to fit in a box and be solid. And they're not. And I'm not. So
Wow.
yeah. Oh, and here's Ivar.
Hi, Ivar. Ivar
Don't
Needle. What's Ivar's full name?
Ivar Needletooth. Yeah. She's a Viking warrior.
This is a cat, by the way, in case people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You all didn't see her again.
We have to translate you for our audience.
I do these guided visualization, guided trances for my immersions, and our recording system was whatever, and so Steve was like, "Well, can you just hold your phone and do it into your phone?" No, I can't do that. Well, do you want me to hold it? I can hold it. No, I don't think I can do that. The one we had the little clippy. This is how I realized how I do trance. Okay, and the tree is off to your left, and and then you're walking down and there's and I can't do it.
The articulation of the actual thing.
And there's a tree off to your, hold on, I have to put the phone down. Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. I would imagine. I don't even know how to. I mean, it's just literally physical expression. You're literally expressing, doing so much of your communication with your body, and so you don't have to normally use your words like you do on a podcast or in a trance. Use your words.
I don't know what they are. That's another piece of this thing. Like, I sometimes really don't know. And I think my critic is like, you have a doctorate. You are not a stupid person. You've learned words. You've learned words. There's nothing preventing words from coming out of your mouth. But sometimes I really don't know what they are. And the same with emotional stuff.
Because that's just not the plane you're operating on. I mean, the verbal is just not one of those dimensions that are helping you to delve into what you're doing. Unfortunately, the rest of the world kind of needs those clues.
And thus is the intersection that we live in, that liminal space where we're like living out here. My hands are waving, but I'm trying to navigate sometimes a world where I have to do this.
You have to go straight ahead.
Yeah.
Straight ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So
there's a question that I was going to ask, but I think it's kind of moot because it sounds like there are no so the question is, what are some of the negotiations between your witchy and mundane lives? But why don't I ask the question and let you answer it instead of me answering it for you? Are there any negotiations that you have to make between your witchy and mundane lives?
Fewer and fewer. When I was trying to be a straight up LPC counselor, I had to learn how to translate everything, because to me, truly everything and all of the ways that I worked and the things that I said had to make sense to me from Falki's positioning in the world. And so I would have to translate that, and my hands are moving through my mouth and to a person sitting across from me who may not quite know what to do with all of this. And so always a little bit of that in that world. I became pretty good at knowing with the individual client, and where am I in space, how much and in what language that could float into the room. Now, I still have a couple coaching clients that, they know I know they know, but I am not going to go all the way there. No. So I still negotiated a little bit, but it's mostly in translation. I think I translate myself for other people, not to make them like me, because that part, but to make sure they understand what I'm saying, in a way that I always hope is useful. But otherwise, I don't negotiate much anymore. I'm lucky that I'm in a relationship with somebody who digs me and digs all of this, including some of the not so pretty parts of the Falki Tara connection. And I work the way I want to work, and I work the way that works for this business.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I sure hope that that's true for my life as well, that the older I get, the less negotiation there needs to be. Yeah,
I would really, this whole croning, midwifing the crone thing is a really big deal to me right now. And I suppose it's because, I have like 18 hot flashes a day. I feel like I'm, being burned down to my bones sometimes. But I've had this vision. So when I was in my master's program in counseling, I had this really cool professor. Her name was Mitzi. I don't remember her last name because she never said it. She was like 65. She had blue. She always wore royal blue nail polish, and she had a Harley, which she would ferry over to the mainland every year to ride to South Dakota on. That was her summer vacation. And we did my psychology of aging or whatever class with her. And she had us imagine ourselves as old people. And that image, because I am also very visual, that image has stayed with me all these years, for 20 something years. And that image is me sitting in a ring of women on a rock with this, I have like a navy blue dress on. It's down to my fingers. My hair is very short and finally very gray. I don't know if that part will ever happen, but I'm sitting there and I'm spinning stories. And that is the crone that I want to be. And she actually is the driving force, I think, behind the work I'm doing now, the stuff that I'm trying to create community now. Yeah, I want to be that old woman. I want to spin out of some stories, and I want to do it in a way that is, I want to be useful. I do want to be useful, but I also want to just buck the system.
Now that sounds like a good Friday night, sitting on a rock with you, listening to you spin stories. Yes, please.
Yeah, totally. Well, I have to say, first of all, I appreciate your taking the time to do this. And I really appreciate the insight and, well, first of all, okay, that was first of all. Second of all, I really appreciate the chance to just chit chat with you because you were in town for a hot minute and then you were gone. She's gone. And so I miss you. And so I really relish this opportunity to just chit chat and to get more insight into you, stuff that I didn't know. So thank you so much for coming and sharing.
Thank you for having me. I've been for the last year or so sitting back going, I'm jealous. I haven't been interviewed on Witchy.
Oh,
Maybe they forgot me.
we love you. We love you. You just got, it's like we have to figure out, like, she doesn't have to actually be in town for this to happen. So
I remember when that occurred to all of us. It was like, oh, that's right. We have technology.
So thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I miss you both.
I miss you too.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!